you stole my whole...
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that's all right. So I'm a mom of a lovely 4-year-old girl, Chloe, who's currently in her second year of Blyth Montessori. And tonight I'd like to talk about why we chose to send her there and how it's working out. So by way of context, just after I finished my undergraduate degree, I was introduced to this method through a job, one of my first jobs out of university as office assistant, very exciting. I had heard about this method before, but I knew next to nothing about it, so it was actually really interesting working in a school, a Montessori school, and the age, it was 3 to 6 and 6 to 9 were the ages that they dealt with. A fairly large school in Ottawa. I became a huge fan of this method, I became a huge fan of this method because I could see it in action. It wasn't just stuff people talked about, I could actually see how it transpired in the daily activities of the children. And it also highlighted to me,
That's okay.
It also highlighted to me how well it works as a model of education. So when I learned about Blyth Montessori, when I think Chloe was 1 or 2, it was just around then, she was young. Yeah. I checked it out and decided that it would be a great place to send her daughter, and I haven't been wrong. So, specifically why Montessori and what's so good about it? First and foremost for me is that the individual child is central in the learning process. That is really key and why it attracted me. It is recognized that children have a natural desire to learn, but they are sincerely interested in what is around them. And children are given credibility, and this credibility excuse me, translates in children being allowed to follow their own interests. Whether they be math or science or reading, whatever, they're allowed to follow their interests. And the philosophy, I think, is that their love of the subject will get them excited and make them more likely to grasp the material successfully. When there isn't a great love of the subject, and you have a very strong-willed child, children are directed or guided towards discovering their less than favorite material in a way that appeals to them. Now, there are a variety of modes of learning that Angela's touched on, from verbal to visual to tactile. And all of these are available to the child and within the Montessori method or model. And I think that actually makes other aspects that they may not like more interesting because it engages more than one part of the child. Now, the key is allowing the child to find what best fits them, and I think the method allows that. Now, the second aspect that I really like about Montessori is their hands-on approach to learning. The materials are concrete, so abstract concepts like math are easily learned because children can engage all their senses. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, last month, I observed Chloe at school. I was shocked because she clearly didn't get visibility from me at her ability to add numbers. Well, I can add. I was shocked at her great ability in math, but her ability to add numbers into the hundreds. I had no concept that she was doing this. I soon realized that the physical materials, beads and tiles, enabled her to work through the additions in a really quick and easy to understand manner. She was speedy. I had no concept that she could just do this so quickly. Now, while I realize she's not yet able to put pen to paper and add the numbers straight up into the hundreds like that, I think this concrete learning will greatly facilitate her ability to do that later on. And another approach in the Montessori method that appeals to me is its inherent flexibility. Because children are innate learners, they may desire to solely focus on one particular subject for a period of time. And the flexibility of the learning schedule allows for this. And in doing so, it doesn't interfere with how children learn. It allows them to follow through on a thought without saying, okay, well, at 10 we stop and you have to go on to this. It allows them to follow it through. And I know my daughter doesn't always cover every single thing in a day, and I don't mind that, but I also know that the fact that she's allowed to follow the natural progression of her thought enriches her learning experience and creates the potential for learning to be much deeper than it would be otherwise. Now, I mentioned earlier that my daughter is in her second year at Blyth Montessori. She started when she was 3 1/2, and I really like the development I've seen over the past year and a bit. She's reading at a basic level, and although she's still tentative, she's gaining confidence in this area as she improves. She wants to read like Jane.
Yeah.
She always talks about how great a reader he is.
Yeah.
One day maybe. So although she's gaining confidence, and I'm also impressed with her math, and her printing is improving greatly tonight, and she loves cursive because I think it was something that was talked about lately, so she really wants to learn cursive. And in fact, at the dinner table tonight, she labeled all of our paper napkins, the fun ones, and she did a little stylized cursive to all of them, so it was really sweet. She's also loves spelling. She's constantly spelling people's names or words and and she first would just ask me how to spell, and now she's sounding it out to spell herself, and it's really great to see that. She's 4. And of course, one of my favorite things is her increasing desire to put her toys away, exactly where they belong. And everything has its place, and she is actually quite particular about where things should go, and gets frustrated when she can't find something because it wasn't put in the right spot. So I said a little bit about why I like the Montessori method and how Chloe's doing, but I must say I really like the fact that Chloe is growing in her awareness of the world around her. She's becoming aware of the need to be conscious about the environment, about being nice to others, and not seeing difference as a negative. I also love the joy she experiences when she recognizes something that she learns in school. For example, the other day I was on the computer, and I'm not sure why it came up, but she recognized the Samoan flag. And she was, I know that, that's the Samoan flag, Mommy. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. Okay, and then she said, we have to hear the anthem. And so I found the anthem for her, and she started singing in their native tongue. And I'm like, oh. So now we listen to this every single night.
It's a very beautiful anthem.
It is, actually.
If you want to listen to it, it is.
It is. So I think that is really cool. Does she need to know the language? Not necessarily, but what it does is waken her awareness that there are other languages out there, that there are other ways of being in the world, that there are other people who do things differently, and they're acceptable, and it's all okay. So the Montessori method is not only, obviously, the only learning model out there, but it is an effective one, and I love the changes in the growth I have been seeing in my daughter. Thank you.